Okay? And yes, it's true that under Illinois law, a school can non-renew a probationary teacher's contract, can just non-renew that person for no reason. They don't have to provide you with a reason. In fact, if I was advising the district, I'd tell them not to give you a reason. Because if you provide you a reason, that could be the basis of a lawsuit down the road. Now, the fourth year, they would have to provide you with a reason. And it should come as no surprise, the courts have said. It should come as no surprise. If somebody's not going to be renewed in the fourth year, it should come as no surprise. There should have been a lot of remedial efforts underway. That teacher should have known what his or her weaknesses were. And in cases where it's just a bolt of lightning out of a clear blue sky, the courts have said, no, we're not going to allow that. So that's just some general rules regarding the non-renewal of a non-tenured teacher. Now, if you have any questions as we go through these, feel free or want clarification, because we're going to be covering quite a bit of ground rather quickly. I hope I don't, if I say anything that may be confusing to you, please call me on it. Student off-campus speech can only be sanctioned by the school if it is a true threat or creates a substantial disruption to school. Students and teachers have constitutional rights. And they're even more, that's true on campus. Students and teachers do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate. That's even more true when they're off school property. And so school officials have gotten themselves in trouble at times by trying to suppress student speech off campus. Okay, and where this is happening a lot right now, you may have read about some of these things, is where students have put together mock MySpace web pages for their principal or for their favorite teacher. Okay, and they put some very derogatory things on those spaces. These are K-12 students. And so the kid comes back to school, and the school takes disciplinary action against that student, kicks him out of school for a few days. This is an emerging area of the law right now. In fact, the Third Circuit down in the southeastern part of the state, there was an appellate court that had two conflicting opinions that came out here a couple months ago. Now they're going to rehear both of these cases. These were different panels that put out conflicting opinions on virtually the same set of facts, where a student put together a parody MySpace page for a principal. And in one case, they said the school could take disciplinary action. In the other case, they said, no, they cannot take disciplinary action. Now, there were some slight issues factually. One was a bit more lewd, profane, obscene, but the courts are very clear. And so because of the electronic nature of it, that's the parts that are emerging. What's very clear is students have off-campus speech rights that we can't interfere with. Okay? School administrators may suspend a special education student for up to 10 days in a school year, regardless of whether the behavior is a manifestation of the student's handicapping condition. Now, this is kind of a trick question. I always get those special ed folks say, no, you can't do that. But it's true. Up to 10 days does not constitute a change of placement. But I know that when we hear that phrase, well, if it's a manifestation of their handicapping condition, they cannot be suspended. Okay? The point is that schools have up to 10 days within which to work in suspending a special ed student within any 1 year. Now, if you go beyond 10 days, that becomes a change of placement. And now we have to have a manifestation hearing to determine whether or not the behavior was a manifestation of the handicapping condition. Okay? How many of you, well, I won't ask you. I already know. A lot of you thought that was probably false, didn't you? Right. Okay? And you're right. When you start talking about manifestation of handicapping condition, we want to tread very carefully there, because students with special needs do have those rights. But it's important for us to know that we have up to 10 days to use in any one school year for suspension. Okay? Yes, please. Okay?
In number 8, it says that you can suspend students for up to 10 days at a time for up to 2 calendar years. What would a student do to get suspended
one of the big three, okay? And the big three would be a weapon, would be a battery on a faculty member, or a serious battery upon another student, or drugs or alcohol, or drugs basically. But typically for 2 calendar years, it'd be where somebody had really brought a gun to school and shot somebody, That would be kind of an example. Good question. Any other questions over any others that we haven't covered so far? Okay? But it's the big three. It's like an assault on a teacher. It would be drugs, or it would be a weapon. Okay. As a general rule, a teacher should never put his or her hands on a student unless the student is a danger to himself and others. Okay, now I know you elementary people, you're already saying, well, the little kid's like, can I have a hug, please? You're going to say, hey, back off, kid. All right, now another step closer. What are you going to do with the little kids? That's why I always like the bigger kids, all right? Because you just say to them, But this is really important in this day and age, because the appearance of impropriety can really harm your career. And so this is the rule that I would provide, and I would give to my new teachers when they come in. We're not putting our hands on anybody unless these are high schoolers, unless they're a danger to themselves or others. Well, what if a kid wants to, some kid wants to come up and give you a little hug? Well, there's a way you can kind of handle that. You turn to the side if you want to give them a little pat on the back. But I can tell you, I'm teaching my future school leaders that we are on the lookout and we are watching for signs of inappropriate relations with students. I'm telling them, as sad as it may sound, everybody's a suspect. And that's just the way it is. The problem we've got these days is that we have too many schools that who've been sued because they didn't take that kind of approach. Now, we know that Daggett tells us he wants 3 R's. We have to have 3 R's in our schools, right? He wants to have rigor. He says, Bill Daggett, who's a consultant that talks about successful schools, says we want to have rigor in our curriculum. That curriculum should be relevant to students in that they should see how it pertains to them in their current lives and how it's going to pertain to them in their future lives. And the third one he says is relationships. And that every student needs to have the feeling that somebody in that building is connected with them and is, in their corner. But the key is you can have that kind of professional relationship with a student without, it's got to be done in a professional manner. You can be friendly without being friends with kids. And so same thing goes with disciplinary matters. If I have a student that's acting up in class, a lot of times the worst thing I could do is go out and put my hands on them. Man, sometimes, being human, you have that feeling of, I'd like to grab this kid and drag him out of class. That's not the way to handle it, because as a general rule, unless they're a danger to themselves or to others, I'm not putting my hands on them. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go walk over to the wall, pick up the phone, call the principal. That's what he or she gets paid to do, or the assistant principal. Now, there may be times where, if we have a fight breaking loose in the classroom, where, again, now is that person a danger to himself or to others? Now we could consider some sort of action, some sort of physical action. But if you keep this in mind, I think it helps clarify for you what the parameters are. I'll tell you, there was one case where a teacher went to the door of the classroom, opened it up, and got punched by a student. Now, guess who ends up going to jail out of this situation? Well, they both go to jail. But guess who's getting sued successfully? The teacher, because the teacher went too far in defending himself. You can only go so far as to neutralize that threat. But he ended up going way too far and put the kid in the hospital. He ended up getting sued out of the deal. Just use that as an example of how we need to be cautious in our dealings with students in using physical force. All right. Yeah, 12 is it's not best practice for your friend, your students on social networking sites. They're not your friends. You can be friendly, but they're not your friends. Now, for you guys, I mean, you're in your 20s, early 20s. And these kids are going to be 17, 18 years old.